Today, the world is remembering Nelson Mandela, the man who went from prisoner to president in South Africa.
He led the movement to bring down that country's segregationist system of apartheid, and he did it in the end by bringing people together. Charlene Israel has the story.
Today, South Africa is a heartbroken country. Nelson Mandela passed away peacefully Thursday at the age of 95.
He is now resting. He is now at peace. Our nation has lost its greatest son. Our people have lost a father.
Across the globe, national leaders and ordinary citizens alike are mourning and celebrating Mandela.
A moral giant who embodied the dignity and the courage and the hope and sought to bring about justice not only in South Africa, but I think to inspire millions around the world.
Nelson Mandela was a giant for justice and a down-to-earth human inspiration.
Bishop T.D. Jakes said of Mandela, "I am deeply saddened to have lost such an enduring symbol of freedom and liberty. Nelson Mandela was an elder statesman who embodied the very essence of servant leader. And the legacy of the man who taught the world it's possible to transform anger into hope will live on." Mandela grew up feeling the shackles of South Africa's brutally racist apartheid system. For 20 years, he led a nonviolent campaign against the government. But then his philosophy changed to one of armed struggle. In 1964, he was sentenced to life in prison for planning to topple the government. When he was finally released in 1990, he had a much more tolerant attitude towards his opponents in the government.
Nelson Mandela understood we cannot hold these grudges if we hope to go forward. There must be some forgiveness. It is not justice that's going to cure the distortions of human community. It is the forgiveness of sin. He was able to forgive.
In 1994, Mandela's dream was realized when black South Africans cast their first ballots in a democratic election, and Mandela became South Africa's first black president. He stepped down in 1999, handing power over to the next generation. Mandela is certain to be remembered not only for his accomplishments and courage, but his character and belief in forgiveness and reconciliation. Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Well, that character was formed in over 2 decades in a prison where he was beaten, he was tortured literally by the guards, and he came to a conclusion in that prison cell that he was the captain of his soul. And if he was going to ever get out of this, he would have to forgive, and he would have to let all of these grudges and these hurts go. And so instead of ruling out of anger and somehow retribution, he ruled out of love. And he was able to unite a country that had been so deeply divided with so many wounds and bring them into the 21st century. It's an incredible legacy. A man who's certainly worthy of admiring and worthy of emulating. And when we all realize that it only seems impossible until it's done, and that was one of his mottos, well, we can get things done. And we're the captain of our own souls. So don't just admire him as a hero, emulate him and say, how can we deal with the problems we face in the same way he did? He found a way to forgive, he found a way to reconcile, and he found a way to move on, which is absolutely what we need here in America. Well, one of our problems here is Obamacare, and a new report may explain why Obamacare got off to such a bad start. John Jessup has that story from our news bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. President Obama never met one-on-one with Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius for more than 3 years before Obamacare's disastrous launch. That's the finding from a review of the president's schedule by the Government Accountability Institute. The group's president says with such an important project on the line, one would expect regular meetings to check on Obamacare's progress. But the report says, according to the White House's own calendar, that never happened. Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus appeared before the Supreme Court this week, but it had nothing to do with a court case. It was all about celebrating the birth of the Savior and the religious liberty allowing that right on the front steps of the nation's highest court. Paul Strand has a story from Capitol Hill.
Once again, Capitol Hill was treated to the sight of a camel, donkey, sheep, shepherds, and wise men wandering their way to the very seat of earthly power. Flanked by Congress on one side and the Supreme Court on the other, these humans and animals gathered to celebrate Christ's birth with a living nativity scene. There's nothing more fun than a bunch of animals like a big old camel wandering through the streets of Capitol Hill. But this procession does have a serious purpose.
We are securing for ourselves a liberty which is enshrined in the Constitution, and that is a liberty of freedom of religion.
For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord.
The clergy sponsoring this nativity scene in Washington are encouraging Americans everywhere to get the permits they need locally to do similar scenes all across the country. And as they slowly made their way past lawmakers and judges, these living nativity participants were making a powerful point to these most powerful Americans.
By displaying the gospel at Christmas time, we're reminding all of our legislators and our jurists who are responsible for law and public policy that we are indeed a nation under a higher authority, the authority of God, to whom we all must make account.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
Christmas signs are popping up around Redmond, Washington for the second year in a row. And while some people are taking issue with it, most people in Redmond, including the mayor, seem to be fine with the signs. They read, "It's okay to say Merry Christmas," followed by a Bible verse.
I feel that it's okay to say Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah or Happy Kwanzaa or whatever holidays that I don't know about that people here celebrate.
I would consider it offensive. It's kind of like everybody else is free to express their opinion. Why cannot Christians?
The signs are placed in the city right-of-way, and the city right-of-way is restricted for, or not restricted, but available for free speech. And this is a form of free speech, just like political signs are and other signs.
So far, no group or church has taken ownership of the signs. The mayor says he has no plans to take them down. While the brutal cold weather is still gripping much of the country, the National Weather Service issued winter storm and ice warnings from Texas to Indiana. Some parts of the Midwest expect to see several inches of snow. The storm system has already blasted through the plains with sub-zero temperatures, dumping 1 to 2 feet of snow in parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin. Grocery stores are selling out as people stock up on food and supplies. And citrus growers are trying to protect their crops from freezing. As the storm moves east, ice storm warnings are in effect and power outages are expected. The death toll in the Philippines from Typhoon Haiyan has now reached more than 5,800. And in the middle of the devastation, CBN disaster relief teams are still on the ground helping the survivors. Here's Asia correspondent Lucille Talusan.
It's a welcome sign of new life. Typhoon victims up on their feet, clearing rubble and getting cash for work through a UN debris removal program. This makes devastated areas more accessible for much-needed humanitarian help and supplies. The village of Candahug is one of the hardest hit. Village leader Edith Soriano is saddened over the death of 129 residents, mostly men.
I persuaded the people to evacuate, but the men chose to stay behind to guard their homes against looters.
One survivor, Aldwin Pabi, says when he finally decided to leave, it was too late. Winds and waves were already overpowering and dangerous.
The strong current swept me 1 kilometer away. I was praying to God to forgive my sins. I really thought I would not survive.
Aldwin's family, along with 300 others, lost their homes. Aldwin and some neighbors are returning to their village, despite the inconvenience of living in makeshift shelters and lack of basic needs like water. So far, CBN Disaster Relief have helped more than 50,000 people here. They've provided feeding, medical missions, and trauma counseling. The efforts are continuing simultaneously in hard-hit areas. Tacloban City Mayor Alfred Romualdez is grateful for the partnership with CBN.
I'd like to thank CBN. I'm not surprised you are here. Actually, I was expecting you to come and be partners in building this city.
The Christian mayor is optimistic about the future.
God is doing this, and it's a turnaround. A lot of people have new lives, have changed. Life is so short. And I tell them, you know, there's a purpose why we all live. And let's live that purpose.
The devastation left by Typhoon Haiyan was catastrophic and historic.
But the Filipino people are determined that with God's help, they will once again rise above these trying times. Lucille Telusan, CBN News, Tacloban, Philippines.
As Lucille mentioned, CBN has helped more than 50,000 people in Tacloban alone, and Gordon more than 94,000 people overall.
And we're making plans now for how to extend that aid over the coming months, because as we transition from immediate disaster need, which is the basics, food, water, medicine, how are these people going to find shelter for themselves? How are they going to have livelihood? How are they going to find work? That city of Tacloban is 200,000 people, and it's been absolutely wiped off the map. It no longer exists. There aren't structures that you can inhabit there anymore. But the people are still there, and you heard the spirit in them. They want to rebuild, and they need our help. So if you want to be a part of it, if you want to be a part of the ongoing relief effort, all you have to do is give to CBN International Disaster Relief. There's the address for it at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia. You can just call us right now, 1-800-759-0700. Just say you want to give to CBN Disaster Relief Fund. Or you can just log on to the internet. There's a place there where you can on the giving page where you can designate your gift to disaster relief. Do it now. Call us now, 1-800-759-0700.
There's now a Bible app just for kids. The creators of YouVersion, the hugely popular free Bible mobile app, have just come out with another free app geared for kids ages 4 through 10. The Bible app for kids can now be downloaded on Apple, Android, and some Kindle mobile devices. It's already been downloaded 1 million times since it was made available Thanksgiving Day. The app was developed in collaboration with the international ministry One Hope, which says it has touched nearly 1 billion young lives with God's Word. Operation Blessing is still on the ground in Washington, Illinois. The community was devastated after a tornado last month. Lisa is a nurse, and she and her family lost everything in the storm, including all of her clothes and work supplies. OB staff and volunteers gave her a large gift basket containing new scrubs, shoes, gift cards, and an assortment of other useful items. To date, Operation Blessing has delivered more than 57,000 pounds of food and relief supplies to needy families. And nearly 500 volunteers have served more than 1,500 hours, helping residents salvage belongings, clean up debris, and pray for those in need. You can find out more about Operation Blessing by going to their website at ob.org.